And welcome, eighth graders, to our reading YouTube videos. This is Anne Frank's Diary of a Young Girl. We are going to read pages 16 to 26 this week. And instead of breaking it up, doing a video per diary entry, I think I'll just go ahead and do the video 10 pages at a time, because that's how I sent it home. So this is going to be a continuous reading of the next 10 pages. This will be a continuous reading of the next 10 pages from 16 to 26. Remember, you have the vocab words along with the 5 questions. And all of that will be due Thursday or tomorrow. And as you are well aware, during this pandemic, we will be not coming back to school, but the work will still be due. Alrighty, let's get started. Thursday, July 9th, 1942. Yeah, the month right there. Dear Kitty, so we walked into the pouring rain. Daddy, Mommy, and I, each with a school satchel and a shopping bag filled to the brim with all kinds of things thrown together anyhow. We got sympathetic looks from the people on their way to work. You could see by their faces how sorry they were. They couldn't offer us a lift. The gaudy yellow star spoke for itself. Only when we were on the road did Mommy and Daddy begin to tell me bits and pieces about the plan. For months, as many of our goods and chattels and necessaries of life as possible had been sent away, and they were sufficiently ready for us to have gone into hiding of our own accord on July 16th. The plan had been to speeded up 10 days because of the call up, so our quarters would not be so well organized. But we had to make the best of it. The hiding place itself would be in the building where Daddy had his office. It would be hard for outsiders to understand, but I shall explain that later on. Daddy didn't have many people working for him. Mr. Kraler, Coupius, and Meep, and Ellie Volson, a 23-year-old typist who knew all of our arrival. Mr. Volson, Eli's father, and 2 boys worked in the warehouse. They had not been told. I will describe the building. There's a large warehouse on the ground floor, which is used as a store. The front door to the house is next to the warehouse door. And inside the front door is a second doorway which leads to a staircase. That's A. There's another door at the top of the stairs, which is frosted glass window in it, which has office written in black letters across it. This is a large main office, very big, very light, very full. Eli, Meep, and Mr. Kufus worked there in the daytime. A small dark room containing a safe, a wardrobe, and a large cupboard leads to somewhat dark second office. Mr. Kraler and Mr. Van Daan used to sit here. Now it's only Mr. Kraler. One can reach Mr. Kraler's office from the passage, but only via a glass door which can be opened from inside, but not easily from the outside. From Kraler's office, a long passage goes past the coal store, up 4 steps, and leads down to the showroom of the whole building, the private office. Dark, dignified furniture, linoleum and carpets on the floor, radio, smart lamp, everything first class. Next door, there's a roomy kitchen with a hot water faucet and a glass stove. Next door, the WC. That is the first floor. We're on page 18. A wooden staircase leads from downstairs passage to the next floor, B. There's a small landing at the top. The door at each end of the landing, the left one leading to the storeroom at the front of the house, leads to the attic. One of those really steep Dutch staircases runs from the side to the other door, opening on the street. The right-hand door leads to a secret annex. No one would ever guess there would be so many rooms. Hidden behind the plain grain door, there's a little step in front of the door, and then you are inside. There's a steep staircase immediately opposite the entrance. On the left, a tiny passage brings you into a room which was to become Frank's family bed sitting room. Next door, a smaller room, a study, and a bedroom for the two young ladies of the family. On the right, a little room without windows containing the wash basin and a small WC compartment. With another door leading to Margaret's and my room, if you go up the next flight of stairs and open the door, you are simply amazed that there could be such a big lighted room in such an old house by the canal. There's a gas stove in the room, thanks to the fact that it was used as a laboratory, and the sink. This is now the kitchen for the Van Dam couple. Besides besides being a general living room, dining room, and scullery, the tiny little corridor room will become Peter Van Dam's apartment. Then, just as on the lower landing, there's a large attic. So there you are. I've introduced you to the whole of our beautiful secret annex. Yours, Annie. Friday, page 19. Friday, July 10th, 1942. Dear Kitty, I expect I have thoroughly bored you with my long-winded description of our dwelling. But still, I think you should know where we've landed. But to continue my story, you see, I'm not finished yet. We arrived in Pringlestraat. Meep took us quickly upstairs and into the secret annex. She closed the door behind us and we were alone. Margaret was already waiting for us, having come much faster on a bicycle. Our living room and all the other rooms were chock full of rubbish, indescribably so. All the chalkboards which had been sent to the office in the previous months laid piled on the floor and the beds. The little room was filled to the ceiling with bedclothes. We had to start clearing up immediately. If we wished to sleep in a decent bed that night, Mommy and Margaret were not in a fit state to take part. They were tired and laid down on their beds. They were miserable, and lots more besides. But the two clear-uppers of the family, Daddy and myself, wanted to start at once. The whole day long, we unpacked boxes, filled cupboards, hammered and tidied up until we were dead beat. We sank into the clean beds that night. We hadn't had a bit of anything warm the whole day, but we didn't care. Mommy and Margaret were too tired and keyed up to eat, and Daddy and I were too busy. On Tuesday morning, we went on where we left off the day before. Eli and me collected our rations for us. Daddy improved our poor blackouts, and we scrubbed the kitchen floor. And we were on to go the whole day long again. I hardly had time to think about the great change in my life until Wednesday. Then I had a chance for the first time since arrival to tell you about it. And at that same time, to realize myself what actually happened to me and what still was going on. Yours, Annie. Saturday, July 11th, 1942. Dear Kitty, Daddy, Mommy, and Margaret can't get used to the sound of the Western clock. Which tells us the time every quarter of an hour. I can. I love it from the start. I loved it from the start, and especially in the night, and it's like a faithful friend. I expect you will be interested to hear what it feels like to disappear. Well, all I can say is that I don't know myself yet. I don't think I shall ever feel really at home in this house, but that does not mean that I loathe it here. It is more like being on a vacation in a very peculiar boarding house. Rather a mad idea, perhaps, but that is how it strikes me. The secret annex is an ideal hiding place. Although it leans on one side and is damp, you'll never find such a comfortable hiding place anywhere in Amsterdam. No, perhaps not even in the whole Holland. Our little room looked very bare at first with nothing on the walls. But thanks to Daddy, who had brought my film star collection, picture postcards on board beforehand, and with the aids of paste and pot and brush, I transformed the walls into one gigantic picture. This makes it look much more cheerful. And when the Van Dams come, we'll get some wood from the attic and make a few little cupboards for the walls and other odds and ends to make it look more lively. Margaret and Mommy are a little bit better now. Mommy felt well enough to cook some soup for the first time yesterday. but then forgot all about it. While she was downstairs talking, so the peas were burnt to a cinder and utterly refused to leave the pan. Mr. Coopers had bought me a book called Young People's Annual. The four of us went to the private office yesterday evening and turned the radio. I was so terribly frightened that someone might hear it, I simply begged Daddy to come upstairs with me. Mommy understood how I felt and came too. We were very nervous in other ways too. The neighbors might hear us or see something going on. We made curtains straight away on the first day. Really, one can hardly call them curtains. They're just light, loose strips of material, all different shapes, qualities, and pattern, which Daddy and I sewed together in a most unprofessional way. These works of art are fixed in a position with drawing pins, not to come down until we emerge from here. There are small, large business premises on the right of us. On the left, a furniture workshop. There's no one there after working hours, but even so, sounds could travel through the walls. We have forbidden Margaret to cough at night, although she has a bad cold, and make her swallow large doses of codeine. I am looking for Tuesday when the Van Dams arrive. It will be much more fun and not so quiet. In the silence that frightens me so in the evenings and at night. I wish, like anything, that one of our protectors could sleep here at night. I can't tell you how oppressive it is never to be able to go outdoors. Also, I'm very afraid that we shall be discovered and be shot. This is not exactly a pleasant prospect. We have to whisper and tread lightly during the day. Otherwise, people in the warehouse might hear us. Someone is calling me. Yours, Anne. Page 22. Friday, August 14th, 1942. Said that backwards. Dear Kitty, I have deserted you for a whole month, but honestly, there's so little news here. I can't find amusing things to tell you every day. The Van Dams arrived the 13th of July. Between the 13th and the 16th of July, the Germans called up people right and left, which created more and more unrest. So they played for safety. Better a day too early than a day too late. At 9:30 in the morning, we were still having breakfast. Peter arrived, the Van Dam son, not 16 yet, a rather soft, shy, gawky youth. Can't expect much more from his company. He brought his cat, Mushki, with him. Mr. and Mrs. Van Dam arrived half an hour later. To our great amusement, she had a large potty in her hat box. I don't feel at home anywhere without my chamber, she declared. So it was the first thing to find its permanent resting place under her divan. Mr. Van Dam did not bring his, but carried a folding tea table under his arm. From the day they arrived, we all had meals cozily together, and after 3 days, it was just as if we were one large family. Naturally, the Van Dams were able to tell us a lot about the extra week they had spent in the inhabited world. Among other things, we were very interested to hear what had happened to our house and to Mr. Goldsmith. Mr. Van Dam told us. Mr. Goldsmith phoned at 9 o'clock on Monday morning and asked if I could come around. I went immediately and found G. In a state of great agitation, he let me read a letter that the Franks had left behind and wanted to take the cat to the neighbors as indicated in the letter, which pleased me. Mr. G was afraid that the house would be searched, so we went through all the rooms, tidied up a bit, and cleared away the breakfast things. Suddenly, I discovered a writing pad on Miss Frank's desk with an address in Maastricht written on it. Although I knew that this was not done on purpose, I pretended to be very surprised and shocked and urged that Mr. G to tear up this unfortunate little piece of paper without delay. I went on pretending that I knew nothing of your disappearance all the time, but after seeing the paper, I got a brave way. Mr. Goldsmith, I said, it suddenly dawns on me what this address may refer to. Now it all comes back to me. A high-ranking officer was in the office About 6 months ago, he appeared to be very friendly with Mr. Frank and offered to help him should the need arise. He was stationed in Maastricht, and I think he must have kept his word and somehow or another managed to get them into Belgium and then on to Switzerland. I should tell them I tell them this to any friend who may inquire. Don't, of course, mention Maastricht. With these words, I left the house. Most of your friends already know, because I've been told myself several times by different people. We were highly amused at the story, and when Mr. Van Dam gave us further details, laughed still more at the very way people can't let their imagination run away with them. Can let their imagination run away with them. One family had seen the pair of us pass on bicycles very early in the morning, and another lady knew quite definitely that we were fetched by a military car in the middle of the night. Yours, Annie. Friday, 21st of August, 1942. The entrance to our hiding building has been properly concealed. Mr. Crowler thought it would be better to put a cupboard in front of our door, because a lot of our houses are being searched for hidden bicycles. But of course, it had to be a movable cupboard that it can open like a door. Mr. Bowser made the whole thing. He had already let him into the secret, and he can't do enough to help. If we want to go downstairs, we have to first bend down and then jump because the step was gone. The first 3 days, we were all going about with masses of lumps on our forehead because we all knocked ourselves against the low doorway. Now we all have nailed a cloth filled with wood wool against the top of the door. Let's see if that helps. I'm not working much as present. I'm giving myself holidays until September. Then Daddy is going to give me lessons. It is shocking how much I've gotten already. There's little change in our life here. Mr. Van Dam and I usually manage to upset each other. It's just the opposite with Margaret, whom he likes very much. Mommy sometimes treats me just like a baby, which I can't bear. Otherwise, things are going better. I still don't like Peter anymore. He is so boring. He flops lazily on his bed half the time, does a bit of carpentry, and then goes back for another snooze. What a fool. It is lovely weather, and in spite of everything, we make the most we can of it by lying on the camp bed in the attic, where the sun shines through an open window. Yours, Annie. Wednesday, 2nd of September, 1942. Dear Kitty, Mr. and Mrs. Van Dam have had a terrific quarrel. I've never seen anything quite like this. Mommy and Daddy would never dream of shouting at each other. The cause was so trivial that the whole thing was a pure waste of breath. But still, everyone to his own liking. Naturally, it is very unpleasant. For Peter, who has to stand by, no one takes him seriously. He is so frightfully touchy and lazy. Yesterday, he was badly upset because he found that his tongue was blue instead of red. This is an unusual phenomenon of nature, disappeared just as quickly as it come. Today, he's going about with the scarf on, as he had a stiff neck. In addition, my lord complains of lumbago. Pains around the heart, kidney, and lungs are not unusual either. He is a real hypochondriac. That's the word for such people, isn't it? It is not all honey between Mommy and Mrs. Van Dam. There's plenty of cause for unpleasantness. To give a small example, I will tell you that Miss Van Dam has taken all 3 of her sheets out of the common linen cupboard. She takes it for granted that Mommy's sheets will do for all of us. It will be a nasty surprise for her when she finds that Mommy has followed her good example. Also, it is thoroughly piqued that her dinner service, and not ours, is in use. She is always trying to find out where we have actually put our plates. They are closer than she thinks. They are in a cupboard box behind a lot of junk in the attic. Our plates are ungettable as long as we are here. And a good thing, too. I've always had bad luck. I smashed one of Miss Van Dam's soup plates into 1,000 pieces yesterday. Oh, she cried angrily. Couldn't you be careful for once? That's the last one I've got. Mr. Van Dam is all sugar to me nowadays. Long may it last. Mommy gave me another frightful sermon in this morning. I can't bear I can't bear them. Our ideas are completely opposite. Daddy is a darling, although he can sometimes be angry with me for 5 minutes on end. Last week we had a little interruption in our monotonous life. It was a look. It was over a book about women and Peter. First, I must tell you that Margaret and Peter are allowed to read nearly all the books that Mr. Koofers lends us, but the grown-ups held back this particular book on the subject of women. Peter's curiosity was aroused at once. Page 26. What was it? What was it the two women were not allowed to read in this book? He got a hold of the book on the sly while his mother was downstairs talking and disappeared with his booty to the attic. All went well for a few days. His mother knew what he was doing, but didn't tell tales until father found out. He was very angry, took the book away, and thought that would finish the whole business. However, he had not allowed for his son's curiosity, which waxed rather than waned because of his father's attitude. Peter, determined to finish it, thought of a way to get hold of his enthralling book. In the meantime, Mrs. Van Dam had asked Mommy what she thought about it. Mommy thought this particular book was not suitable for Margaret, but saw no harm in letting her read most books. There's a great difference, Mrs. Van Dam said Mommy, between Margaret and Peter. In the first place, Margaret is a girl, and girls are always more grown up than boys. Secondly, Margaret has read quite a lot of serious books and does not go in search of things that are forbidden her. And thirdly, Margaret is far more developed and intelligent, shown by the fact of her being in the fourth form at school. Mrs. Van Dam agreed, but still thought it was wrong in principle to let children read read books which were written for grown-ups. In the meantime, Peter had found a time of the day when no one bothered about him or the book. 7:30 in the evening, then everyone was in a private office listening to the radio. That was when he took his treasure to the attic again. He should have been downstairs again by 8:30. Well, because his book was so thrilling, he forgot the time and was just coming downstairs as his father came into the room. You can imagine by the consequences with a slap and a snatch the boy laid on the table. And Peter was in the attic. That's how matters stood as we sat down to table. Peter stayed upstairs. No one bothered about him. And had he gone to bed without any supper? We went on with the meal, chattering gaily. Page 27. When suddenly we heard a piercing whistle, and we all stopped eating and looked with pale, changed faces from one to another. Then we heard Peter's voice calling down the chimney. I say, I'm not coming down anyway. Mr. Van Dam sprang to his feet. His napkins fell to the floor, and scarlet in the face, he shouted, I've had enough of this. Daddy took his arm, afraid of what might happen, and the two men went together to the attic. After a good deal of resistance and stamping, Peter landed up in his room with the door closed, and we went on eating. Mrs. Van Dam wanted to save one slice of bread for the dear boy, but his father stood firm. If he doesn't apologize soon, he'll have to sleep in the attic. Loud protests from the rest of us, as we thought missing supper was quite enough punishment. Besides, Peter might catch cold, and we couldn't call a doctor. Peter didn't apologize. He was already in the attic. Mr. Van Dam did nothing more about it, but I noticed the next morning that Peter's bed had been slept in. Peter's was back in the attic at 7 o'clock, but Daddy managed with a few friendly words to persuade him to calm down again. Sour faces and obstinate silence for 3 days, and then everything went smoothly once more. Yours, Anne. Alrighty, you guys, thanks for listening. That's page 16 to 26. Next week, we'll be on pages 26 to 36. Till the next video, have a great day.